All right, fig lovers, this is Ross, the Fig Boss. Today we're gonna actually be pruning fig trees. It's that time of the year here in the Philadelphia area. First of all, we've had a few frosts, actually rather early this season. Those frosts and the colder temperatures have set the trees into dormancy. And that's usually what happens. The trees will kind of do their thing. They may even have fruit on them. They may even ripen fruit after frost. But the frost comes in and sets them into dormancy, or the colder temperatures. If you don't have a dormancy period or frost where you guys live, you can still grow fig trees. But what you want to do to actually set your dormancy period so you can prune your fig trees is you want to defoliate the trees. Remove all the leaves, be very careful, wear gloves, wear long sleeves, and if you're going to be pruning them at all, definitely wear long sleeves and gloves. The sap can be caustic to people's skin. Everybody's a little bit different, every fig tree is a little bit different. I've got burned many times, and just be careful of that. So that's when we're going to be pruning our fig tree, is actually during dormancy. Now you can prune them during the summer. I have talked about in other videos how you can actually prune them to encourage them to put out a second flush of growth in the summer that then also produces another crop of main crop figs that then ripen later in the season. It's a really awesome technique if you have a long enough season. However, we don't normally prune them in the summer because that's where the figs are. The figs grow, or as the tree grows, the figs form. So if we remove the growth during the active growing season, we're removing our fruits, and that's the whole point of even growing a fig tree. Well, this branch is roughly 2.5 to 3 feet in length. If I bring this back by a third or a half or even 90%, this section of the tree will just really want to grow and grow and grow next year. This part of the tree may even grow 7 to 10 feet in one season because we pruned it so hard and we head back the branches. So you don't want to head back the branches if you want fruit. Instead of taking this branch back by a third, a half, or 90%, we want to take it back 100%. We want to bring it back to as low as the point that we possibly can. Now that's called a thinning cut, not a heading cut. So all the cuts that I'm going to be doing here on this video are going to be thinning cuts. A lot of you guys have a tree that's too tall. So as an example, if we take the tallest point on our fig tree, which on this tree is this branch here and this branch here, if I follow that back, I trace that back to the lowest point, it's going to then go down to the soil line. So one of the tricks and things that I like to do is get a saw, actually not pruning shears. Very little pruning is done with pruning shears on fig trees and most fruiting trees. You get a saw. This is a perfect tool. And we actually come in here down at the base and we remove one of the trunks. So if you guys have a bush rather than a fig tree, figs naturally want a bush unless you trained them into a tree, you're gonna have multiple trunks. And you could potentially come all the way down to the base and remove a single trunk every year. We took out one of the scaffolds right back there. It's a pretty thick branch. We brought that back. In its place is now this growth here. But also what has come up is this water shoot all the way from the base. We call these suckers in the world of fig trees. And guess how tall that water shoot is? It's almost taller than any of the other scaffolds on these trees. So if I really wanted to, let's say I could take out this scaffold right down here. So this guy that goes up, we follow this all the way up to the top of the tree. I could remove that if I wanted, because then this other one here is gonna take its place. Because if you remove a trunk, then something else will grow up in its spot. And you'll eventually have this recycling process. I don't see a great reason to remove any of the trunks down here at the base. I think the tree is low enough in height. Now the same thing happens on a tree. We have one single stem that comes up and then it branches out and forms scaffolds. So instead of, if I wanted to follow back the highest point like on this tree all the way down, I could find the scaffold, which is this one here that it's attached to, and remove that. Now, that's a little drastic for certain situations and certain people. Maybe you don't want to remove that much. Generally, the more growth that we remove, the less fruit that we're going to get the following season. Certain people have trees that are just too massive. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here and we're gonna make a cut right here. I'm gonna follow the largest, the tallest shoots, and I'm gonna cut them all the way back to a lower point. And I'm gonna use a saw, because that's all that's really necessary. All right, so there's the tallest growth now gone. We'll put that aside, we'll sell that as cuttings. We also have this point of growth right here. That was the tallest point on the tree as well. Now, if I were to keep this, there's nothing wrong that's gonna happen. And also, fig trees, I wanna say this, they don't require annual pruning to be productive the following year. That is just a general myth I've heard about with all fruiting trees. You know, until the tree that you have has been in the ground for like 30 years, 50 years, it's been in the ground, it's so old and decrepit that it's really struggling to grow quickly, and it's not producing a whole lot of vegetative growth, and you want that to happen, or maybe it's really not fruiting a whole lot, then you can say, all right, well, I want to prune it a lot more so I can rejuvenate the tree. I want to remove it at its lowest point possible. I don't want to remove this leaving some of that growth behind. Every cut I make is flush with the trunk of the tree. So that's one. I'm also going to remove this. We're going to bring this back as low as possible. There's no reason to really keep that because I don't want anything growing out in this direction anyway. All right, so now we have another tree we're going to look at. This is called Nerino, or Moro de Caneva. You can see it's got a main trunk down here at the base, and it splits off to multiple scaffolds. It's the biggest tree, the tallest tree at this moment in the yard. What's also happening, because I have so many fig trees in this plot, is that we have a lot of shading that's going on behind the Caneva fig tree. And also, if I don't reduce the height of this somewhat, the tree will probably reach 25, maybe 30 feet in the near future. We're just gonna follow some of these branches up here back to a much lower point. We're gonna leave this branch here because this is smaller, and this is gonna fruit for me next year, and this is gonna help aid the structure of the tree going forward. But I'm going to take this out, flush with the tree. And that just took out a lot of growth. Because again, I brought this growth flush back to this growth here that will then replace what we just removed, okay? The same thing's gonna happen with this growth up here, follow this all the way down, and we bring it back to its lowest point. Now, it's unfortunate we don't already have a growth like this that can replace it, but maybe at some point in the future, we will. Flush. And there it is. And that's how you prune a fig tree with as very few cuts as possible. That's the key. You want to take one lesson from this video? That's a good one to take. This branch here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm following all this down, and again, we're going to use our saw and we're going to remove this growth as low as I want. Flush with growth that's already existing, and there you have it. So now this tree, if we just look at it really closely, it's still got a lot of branching in here. It's still gonna be very productive. We have a lot of fruiting wood here for next year. We actually have a lot of breva buds on here, but we've dramatically reduced the height. So we also have some suckers back here. These are just growth that's really healthy, really vigorous, that's coming up from the base. These are water shoots. Typically these don't fruit. I'm leaving a little bit here, down here at the base, but ideally what you want to do is remove as much of this sucker as you can, because the more you leave behind, it'll continue to sucker in the future.